Well, as Pastor Steve mentioned, this is a very different service for us this morning, and I want to go ahead and invite our Brazil team up front. And I need to make sure, Karena, you need a mic, and Dan needs a mic, wherever the second mic ended up. So there was, just as I was thinking about our trip and kind of how things played out, there was just this overwhelming kind of sense of thanksgiving that I was feeling, and I think that's the one word that I think would really describe the effect that this trip has had on myself, and hopefully on our team as well. But just thanksgiving, first and foremost, for God's faithfulness to see us through this trip. For the most part, by God's grace, we were mostly healthy throughout the trip. Sorry, Dan. Sorry, Elena. There were a couple that got sick. But by God's grace, most of us functioned very well throughout the trip. I was thankful for God's love that was displayed through our brothers and sisters in Brazil, individuals whom we had never met before, yet had more in common with than people I would meet at the grocery store down the street from my home through the blood of Christ. That just sense of unity. We talked about it a little bit at the beginning of the service last week, that when we gather with brothers and sisters outside of this context, you just get this sense of the unity we have through Christ. And then also, I'd be remiss if I didn't say I'm thankful for all of you, for your support financially leading into this trip, for your praying for us during the trip. It was a comfort to know that those prayer guides that we prepared weren't going to waste, that they were being utilized, and people were praying over those requests and kind of through our schedule and thing, and that those prayers ultimately both sent us, sustained us, and then now have brought us home. And so thank you all for what you've done for us and for our team, and then for our families. My family, the families of all of these students here, for Dan, Karen, and Caitlin as well. We couldn't have had a successful trip without your support. If you had asked me 2 years ago what I would be doing in June of 2023, a missions trip to Brazil with them wouldn't have been at the top of my list. It wasn't on my radar. And so I thank you that you were willing to trust not only God, but me in a sense, and Dan and Karen and Caitlin too, to get these students there and back safe and sound. And so parents, families, thank you so much for your help. Thank you personally to each of you that reached out to my wife. Sorry. It was the love of the body displayed through action. For those of you who reached out to my wife and said, hey, how can we help you this week while I was gone? She was a trooper with our 5 boys, but yet you guys were right there coming alongside her. Some of you brought meals, others just simple tasks as helping her get the kids into the building on Sunday morning for church. Something that's so simple, yet we really appreciated your care, and I really appreciated your care for her during that. We're missing 2 of our team members. How dare they decided to go on vacation or something. And so Morgan Yund and Jaden Yund aren't with us this morning, so we are 2 light up here. But I do have a statement from Morgan that I want to share that she sent me earlier this week when I asked. From Morgan, she says, I'm so thankful for your financial and spiritual contributions, and this trip would not have happened without you. I'm so grateful that you gave us the opportunity to do that. And even though I'm not able to be there this Sunday, please know that you can come up to me anytime in the following weeks, and I would love to talk with you about the trip because it was such an amazing experience. Sincerely, Morgan Yund. And so I think you'll see we've got, the way this kind of play out, I was trying to figure out how to organize literally 600, 700 pictures that these guys took, hours of videos that were taken, some good, some Some were a true youth trip, youth group trip through and through. And so I kind of went to organize it kind of on 5 kind of segments of our trip. And so we'll look at kind of around town, and we'll talk about some of the experiences we had with food. We'll look at the 2 schools that we spent time with. We'll also look at our time at the Life Center, which is the Richners' kind of home base for their ministry in Deuser-Maus. And then lastly, we'll look and talk about kind of our excursions and some of the fun activities we got to experience during the trip. And then we'll just share some general thoughts, and I've got some other things to share after that as well. And so our first section is, I titled it Around Town and Time to Eat. And so let's go ahead and watch. So it gives you just a glimpse into kind of our experience both in the town and the food we got to enjoy. And so Dan and Karina, you both kind of volunteered to take this first question. What are some of your thoughts on the town? And what were your thoughts going into the trip, during the trip? How did they compare? How did they contrast?
So before we left, we were kind of told that it wouldn't be as different, it would be kind of what we're used to. But I was kind of still stuck in the mindset that, we're going out of the country is going to be so different and so strange. But getting there, it actually wasn't that different. There were definitely some differences, but it was pretty much the same.
So my last mission trip was to Humbe, Nigeria, where it was mud huts. Deuser-Maus is anything but that. Very metropolitan city, very safe. You could walk around it. Just very neatly laid out as well. I think my biggest surprise was it was in the 50s and 40s, but man, it was cold. I think that was probably the biggest surprise. There's so much humidity in the air, but beautiful town, great place.
Yeah, to speak to the humidity, in the schools, they don't have air conditioning in the schools. At least it wasn't on when we were there. But the main hallways of the schools were, and you'll see some in the pictures here in another video, were just block walls with windows. And so it was literally to the point, it was so humid and so cool that you could walk down the hall and wipe the water off the wall, and it would just run. And so it was just a totally different sort of experience than what we think of when we think of cool and damp. It was kind of like late fall, almost trying to be winter, where you're like, come on, just snow, stop raining already. But the humidity in the air was just penetrating. You felt wet the whole time. And so that was just a very different experience. For everyone, since we're talking about food, and then we're gonna switch to food, favorite bite you took, favorite meal we had. All right, so favorite bite you took, favorite meal you had.
Well, they were one and the same. The first night in, we went to a pizza joint and mounds of other food, but the garlic pizza was outstanding.
His breath was nice after that too, I'm sure.
I like the banana frittata, which is fried and delicious with little powdered sugar on it. And I loved the fondue restaurant that we went to for many, many reasons, which I'm sure other people might talk about too.
I liked the steak. We went to a Brazilian steakhouse, and it was so good. So that was also probably my favorite.
I liked everything, but I'm going to change it to drink because I feel like this might get a little bit overlooked. It was a thing called Guaraná, and it's like a fruity drink. I think I'm probably like addicted to it. I feel like I'm having withdrawals now, so that was my favorite sip.
I think everyone was addicted to Guaraná. But my favorite bite would be different than my favorite meal because I had something on my bucket list for this year that I wanted to try something new. So chicken heart was my little new thing I got to try. It is actually surprisingly pretty good. I didn't think I would like it, but I ended up getting it twice. So I wouldn't have it as like a full meal, but it's fine. My favorite meal, I would have to agree with the pizza place. That was really cool. I had a favorite slice. It was pretty much normal, but then it had sprinkled on top these little baby fry looking things that were like potato chips, and I've kind of been obsessed with them since.
I would probably also have to say that my favorite meal was the pizza place, and there I had this dessert pizza that was dark chocolate and strawberries, and it was amazing.
Just hold the mic.
My favorite thing I ate were chicken hearts. They were so good. My favorite meal wasn't my favorite because of the food. It was so at the steakhouse. Me, Mr. Richner, I think Pastor Ryan, Miss Kranek were sitting around each other, and we were just able to talk for like an hour and a half, and it was just really good just to be able to sit back and listen, just all the wisdom that was being thrown around.
Yeah, and Jacob he was like the king of the chicken hearts. It was pretty much anywhere we went that had chicken hearts, it's like, oh yeah, I'll take some. And so he was piling them on.
My favorite bite would also be the chicken hearts. My first bite, I didn't even know it was a chicken heart because I don't speak Portuguese, and they were just putting it on my plate. And then my favorite meal were probably the breakfasts, just sitting with everyone that early in the morning. We got up really early. And after having so many late nights and then just getting up so early in the morning, it was like a bonding thing because we were all so tired. So,
Elena, can you describe the chicken hearts so they understand?
it depends on how they're cooked. Figure that out real fast. Sometimes they're a little rubbery, and you kind of have to break through the outer layer with your teeth. I would say like a kibasi. I mean, I don't know if you've ever had that. Like you break through the skin part, and then it juices kind of out onto your mouth, and then it's a little bit of a chew. Yeah, that's the best I can do.
I would describe, they're about the size of those little cocktail weenies, like you put in the crock pot with the jelly and the chili sauce and you have at parties, about that size. And if you think of a cocktail weenie with a natural casing on the outside, so you have to bite through it. And it just had a little bit of a sausagey flavor to it, right?
Yeah, the chicken hearts were definitely an experience. They were surprisingly good, but I think my favorite bite was the bacon wrapped chicken, just because it was so juicy and flavorful. My favorite meal, though, I think was when we did a Mexican night with some of the people from the church. Not necessarily because of the food, but I just really enjoyed sitting down with the people there and trying to communicate with them. We didn't speak Portuguese and they didn't speak a whole lot of English, but it was still a lot of fun to just get to know them as best we could.
So my favorite thing I ate over the whole trip was they brought me a piece of pineapple that was cooked and covered in cinnamon and sugar, and it was amazing. And then my favorite meal was at the Brazilian steakhouse because they just kept bringing me different types of steak. It was amazing. Just more and more until flipped the little thing down to say we've ate way more than we should have.
My favorite meal was at the pizza place. I can't tell if it was from just the lack of food, like real food, because of the airport food. Like that was the day we had gotten back, but it was really good. And then my favorite bite was from that place. It was like a dessert pizza. I don't know if it's like cheesecake, but it was really good.
The one that was like the brownie and cheesecake like woven together.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I do want to commend the Richners. They took really good care of us when it came to food. And it sounds really extravagant, but we ate at an all-you-can-eat buffet every day for lunch pretty much, and it costs less for that. And that was with, like 4 different types of pasta, 6 different types of meat off the grill, like think a little window of Texas de Brazil with a buffet. And it was less for that than it was to get just a standalone Big Mac here. And so it was less than $6 for us to each eat all we could eat and have a drink and have dessert included. And so it sounds, again, like really extravagant, like all these things we're eating, but the cost was so advantageous that it actually was cheaper almost to do that than to buy deli meat and make sandwiches back in our hotel. It was a blessing having the hotel kind of as our home base because we had comfortable beds to sleep in. We had most of us hot showers when we needed them. There was some weather that came through. You may have caught it in an email or not, but we had about 3 days of rain the second part of the week, and it was enough rain that there was some substantial flooding that they hadn't seen in 100+ years in some of the lower lying areas. So it was nice to be able to come back to kind of a warm, safe home base, if you will, when all that was going on. And that was really the only time we lost hot water. But praise God that Dan Craniac figured out how to press a button to reset the Instahots so we could have hot water after about a day or so of, I've never had to get so psyched up to take a shower. I mean, literally, it was so cold, you're like, nope, can't do it. Foot, it was. And so I'm really excited, speaking of the Richners, that Randy, or Handal as they call him down there, Handal will be here with us in August, and so he'll get to share some as well as preach and teach. And so really excited for him to be up here, for all of you to meet him. I know you got to meet him briefly last summer, I believe it was. But really to get to meet him, know him, fantastic couple, somebody I would really love to see our church come alongside and support in the future. I'm kind of set that I would love in 3 or 4 years to take another group and go right back there. And between now and then to send a group of adults down there to help them out. It really is a fantastic experience. They really do take good care of you. As Dan was saying, the town is very walkable. We did most of our travel was walking when it was less than a 15-minute walk. Other than that, we had a van that he arranged for us for some of the longer commutes and things. But it really was a fantastic experience in the town and everything. And so we'll kind of switch now to our next section. We spent time in 2 schools. One is School 29, and they have like longer names, but School 29. And the other one was School 10. School 29 was the first one we went to. That was on Monday and Tuesday mornings. And it was a very, the initial walking in, I think, was like, what are we doing? But man, it was really bittersweet walking out Tuesday afternoon. Kids in tears. It was really sweet. And so there's 2 very different experiences between the schools, but yet some very similar things that happened. And so we'll watch the first video here in a second. Is about 5.5 minutes long, just so you know. And then the second one, I'll go right into it after that, is just over a minute. And so you'll kind of see how our time with the schools kind of played out. you watch the little kids that are kneeling down watching, they're grading the whole process. And so they're all thumbs down, booing them. And we had to exchange, and so we had to share something from our end towards them. And what was neat about that is you could see there, a couple different segments from that 5-6 minute video that they were starting to pick up on the dance, yet they didn't have it. But through social media, they reached out to Elena, right? And 4 or 5 of the girls mastered it within hours and had videos posted and were communicating. And so that was pretty special as well. And then this now is the next school we were at on Thursday all day and then Friday morning. So most of our time in the schools was spent working through in small groups. We had flashcards of different topics and things that we worked through, teaching English, learning the Portuguese. And so it was a lot of fun just getting to know them in that way, being overwhelmed with names. Because, we would share, my name, meu nome is Ryan, what's your name? And they'd be like, do-do-do-do-do-do, and we'd be like, okay, and you just keep moving, right? Because you just can't, we'd spend all day trying to learn 7 names. However, lots of repeated names, so that helped. But I just want to ask kind of who has general thoughts on kind of our experience in the schools, wants to share maybe a story, something that happened, thoughts, what you were expecting going in, how it differed and all that. And so, Cassandra?
Okay, so I wanted to kind of share a funny story. It was snack time, and they all had different snacks, and it was milk and bread, I think. And we were all sitting down drinking it, and then this one kid comes up to us, and he's just spitting out Portuguese, and I came back, and I still only know 7 words of Portuguese. So we had no clue what he was saying, and the translator finally comes up, and she asks, hey, what are you saying? And then she said, he said, my milk is yucky, do you want it? And we were like, we're good. So
I don't know. It was just cracking me up.
Okay, so at our last school, it was when the flooding was happening, and there was like houses that were like underwater because they were like so low and there was so much rain like nonstop, and we didn't even know if we were going to go to school the last day because of how bad the area was and how much flooding and damage to people's houses were. But we went in late. And all these kids, well, the principal, or I don't know, the lady was like, we're so lucky to have these people here after all the bad things that happening to us are still, I don't know the exact
She was
words.
a secretary and administrator at the school, and yeah, I actually forgot about that. As we walk into the classroom, they were kind of in like emergency mode. They didn't know what kids were coming. They didn't know what teachers were coming, and so they were just putting kids in rooms like, hey, we've got an adult, here's 40 kids, go in there. And it was, there were pictures that Handal had on his phone from other people in their church. The flooding literally was up to gutters on some houses. There was a Catholic gym across, a Catholic school that had a gym across the street from our hotel, and that turned into a shelter during this. The Life Center, which we'll talk about here in a few minutes, it turned into a shelter of a place, come get dry, we have warm drinks, we have tea, we have coffee and all that. And so this flooding was really bad. And so that Friday, we were supposed to be there all day and see another like 300 kids. But it just became kind of, yeah, it was emergency mode. And the secretary walks in, she leads us up to the room that we're going into first, and said, yeah, like, look, there's lots of terrible things happening, but like, what a blessing it is that there's still good things happening. And like, it was kind of amazing that they thought of us as that good thing that was going on. And so that actually made, it just was really very sweet in that moment.
Anyways, my funny story that goes along with that is not like, I mean, it's not super funny, but one of the Brazilian guys was talking to me, and he's like, yeah, he's like, it's raining and stuff, and like, I mean, it's all in like, so it's not really good English, but he's like, I came here for the Americans, and then he does like this like big like flexing thing, and a lot of people were I felt very blessed to have, I mean, just be a blessing to other people. They were very appreciative of us, and I mean, I don't know, we take so many things like for granted here, and although they were like very like fortunate of like a richer part of Brazil, we were still like, I mean, the difference between fortunate here and fortunate in America is like a lot different. So just being a blessing to those people was amazing. Yeah.
So I have like two stories, but the first thing that I want to say is it was just like really funny is in the second school, everybody was like coming up to us with notepads and like getting our signatures, and I was like, what is going on? And then I never thought I'd sign like 200 signatures. I'm like, what? I didn't know we were famous, but I guess we are.
We were the Americans, right?
Yeah.
Like, we were a rock and roll band. We were them. We were it.
America. But another thing is that as I was trying to explain goat to one of the kids in the first school, they were saying like Messi, like the soccer player Lionel Messi, because GOAT stands for greatest of all time. And then I just said that to every table to try to get them to understand what a goat was. And then every single kid knew me as Messi for the rest of that day and the next day. And yeah, I would just walk somewhere, and then there would be a group of kids like, Messi! And I was just like...
So I think my favorite story from all the schools was it was the first school on the first day at recess. And I didn't really know what to do. I was just kind of standing there like waiting for something to happen. And I just felt like a little tug on my shirt. And I looked down, and there was a little kindergartner there. He pulls my shirt again and then just takes off to wherever, turns around and wants me to follow. So I followed this little kid through wherever they were to a basketball court. And, so he throws a basketball at me, and I'm shooting, and then he wants to shoot. So he walks right up, has a like almost fully chewed apple, puts it in my hand, takes the basketball, and starts shooting. So I mean, it was great. And then I ended up playing soccer, which was a wonderful experience. But especially with me, I think that stuff's kind of gross. But I didn't really get a choice. It was just like, this is yours now, I want the basketball.
There was one group that I talked to. I think the flashcards we had was like places to go. So we showed them a picture of an art museum, and one of the kids, he spoke really good English, and he was just fascinated with everything we showed him. So he was like, oh, I love to draw. And so they all pull out like their notebooks, and they just start flipping through all their art that they had did. And it was really cool to see. They were really good, so.
The first school we went to was a poorer school, let's put it that way. So a lot of the students there, they often, I guess, felt forgotten, or the state didn't necessarily show them as much love as the wealthier schools, just by how the wealth is distributed. And so as we were wrapping up the day, in the classroom, they would ask us questions, or we would ask them questions or whatnot. And so one of the students asked us, why did you choose our school? And I was standing there, and I'm like, is that not like a little sense of just a little glimpse of the gospel of, it reaches all, even those who are forgotten from the world. It's still true, and it reaches them. So I thought that was really cool, just standing there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a moment where we didn't choose that school. God opened the door for us to be in that school. Both of the schools we were in were schools that Handal had not been made contact with yet. And so they were both new experiences for him, new doors that had been opened. And I would say even with the kids we missed on Friday because of the weather, we probably saw a good 600 plus kids between the two schools. And so it was really, really amazing, just the seeds we were able to plant through what we were doing. Did anybody else have anything they wanted to? Evan?
I was just going to share. I think it was on the second day. We were all tired, getting ready to go home, and we're leaving the school, and we walk by this classroom full of younger kids that we hadn't gotten to work with. And they all kind of look at us and wave, and the teacher motions us in and is like, can you guys just say hi to them? They're so excited to see you. And so we just got to say hi to them, give them high fives, give them hugs, and just to see their excitement of how happy they were that we were there just to meet us was really cool.
So something that's really stood out to me in the schools is we honestly didn't do a big thing for them. All we were doing was we were going in, we were teaching them just a little bit about ourselves and a little bit of English, but how much that meant to them was just it kind of blew me away, to the point where, like Mr. Adkins said, they were in tears when we were leaving. But there were a few of the kids that I really connected with. In the first school, there were two girls named Clara and Manuela. And they're the ones, I don't know if you saw in the video, but Clara was the one that was teaching me to dance, which is not an easy thing to do. I enjoy dancing, but I'm not very good at it. And I actually got their contact information, and we still sometimes chat, which was really good. But then in the second school, one of the kids came up to me, and they gave me this folded up piece of paper. And I open it, and this kid, while we were there, had drawn a picture of me with my yellow jacket and my smiling face. And it was just so sweet. I don't even know how she found time to do that. But she did it really quickly, and it was a beautiful picture, better than what I could have done. And it just really touched my heart that even though we were doing something so simple, it just meant so much to these kids. So.
Yeah, it was very. She even wanted her picture with Caitlin. It was just this cool, sweet little moment in the hallway. Just this exchange. Did anybody else have any other thoughts?
Real quick, because Jacob won't say it, but in the second school, on the second day, we were walking into one of the emergency classrooms, and we were about to just walk in, and Pastor Ryan brings Jacob forward, and he walks in the room, and it was just the loudest screaming of the word Jacob I've ever heard. Like, the most excited I've ever seen people to see anybody. Like, it was, like, unimaginable how loud it was in there.
It was very loud.
And all they had to do was just see Jacob, like, a little bit, and they knew he was coming back. It was really amazing.
Yeah, one of the things we would do at the end was we'd kind of quiz them on some of the English, and all right, we'd hold up a card, and, does anyone remember what this is? Oh, it's guinea pig, and then, like, we'd throw them a piece of candy sort of thing. And one of the things we would do is, all right, who remembers what his name is? And some of them, it was just like, silence. And then you just ask others, and you'd be like, Jacob! Like, they would know it right
He
away.
was
And so
by
it was
far
just,
the class celebrity.
yes. Seth as well. Ian had some classes. Like, it was just fun to see, like, which kids kind of bonded with the others. And so one of the things that was very special in the schools, at the first school, the administration, I think our deputy director, I think, was actually, so I would assume she's kind of like our principal here. The deputy director actually called the local news reporter. And so all of a sudden we're like working, and Randy kind of touches me on the shoulder and is like, hey, just so you know, there's a reporter here taking pictures. And I kind of look over, and this guy's like taking pictures, and then he goes over, gets to have like a 20-minute conversation with him. I got to talk with him. What was neat about that was, that the administration wanted everyone to know what was going on at their school. Like, there was this level of excitement. But not only that, that news story posted within 3 hours of our leaving the school that day. And so this was the top picture. I wish it was clearer for you, but the top picture that was on the story, and it was posted on Instagram. And I just want to read kind of what this reporter's, his story was. And so I'll have it in Portuguese up there, but I'll translate it for you. If you don't know, it's okay, I can't read it either. All right, so it says, English with Americans. Escola 29 de Setembro welcomes American students. English with Americans. That's what students in the 6th and 7th years of elementary school at Escola Municipal de Ensino Fundamental 29 de Setembro in the Moinho Velho neighborhood experienced on Monday morning. During periods of English foreign language discipline, the two classes of 29 de Setembro held a conversation with 14 Americans, residents of the city of Cleveland in the state of Ohio, who are visiting Dois Irmãos. Organized in pairs, Brazilian students talked to a I don't know. There he is. All right. Talk to the pair or trio of Americans, and my battery might be dying. Can somebody run me 2 double A's? And through talk with the pair or trio of Americans through questions and answers on various topics. English teacher Simone Klaas Herley considers the experience positive. For most students, it is their first contact with Americans, and they realize that they have the ability to communicate in another language, said Simone. Welcomed by the pastor of the Biblical Ministry Church of Dois Irmãos, Randall Richner, the Americans arrived in the city last Saturday. They are high school students and will spend a week in Brazil. Handal, who is also American but has lived in Brazil for 27 years, works on the Life Center project in Dois Irmãos. He says that the students are in Brazil for the first time. They came here with their own resources. They will work in the community, develop relationships, and practice Portuguese. I'm amazed at how young people interact, revealed Handal. Group leader Ryan Atkins spoke about Brazil's first impressions. It's been great meeting the people here and seeing the spirit of my colleagues and Brazilians. We also had the experience of playing volleyball and soccer, which went very well, he says. The young people, os jovens, who are staying at a hotel in Dois Irmãos have already had dinner at a pizzeria and lunch at a steakhouse in the city, will return to tomorrow to talk to the 8th and 9th grade students. The deputy director of 29 de Setembro, Rosemarie Sassoni, evaluates the visit positively. It's an immersion in the American culture that they end up getting to know during the conversation, reveals the deputy director. And so that was the whole story as it was posted. Within a week, it had over 180 shares and links and clips and all this stuff. And so it was just really amazing to see an additional comments from community members as they were seeing this story, sharing it with others. And so like there was already this impact happening, and that was Monday afternoon. And so it was just really amazing just how God opened that door. That was totally unexpected, just kind of, I kind of listed, and I'll share some more in a minute, these, I called them unintended impacts. Things that we didn't know were unexpected impacts, things that we didn't know were going to happen that happened as a result of this trip. One other thing that was really incredible was Randy, during our lead up to the trip, had shared with us, look, you may not see fruit on this trip. However, just know that seeds are being planted. And he also shared how they had just received some students into the youth group at a couple of their churches from a missions trip that had happened last summer. And so it was a 12-month kind of turnaround for some of these students to join in and get involved in their church. But we actually saw some fruit. We saw 2 students, one from the first school, one from the second school. A girl, I believe her name was Maria, from the first school came to youth group in Deutschermaus on Saturday evening when we gathered with their youth. And it was this amazing thing where she joined us because we were going to be there, and she already knew other people that were there. And so there were all these connections, and then she was back the next day, the next evening for church. And then also, second school, you want to change me out, Dan? A boy from the second school he was the only youth at the church, and so he was the only teenager in the church, and so, Randy said, we're not trying to steal people from other churches, but my thought is, if that's what gets that young man plugged into a group of peers and allows him to just solidify and embolden his faith, that's a win. And so it was really amazing, a blessing that we got to see some fruit as a result of this trip while we were still there. And so I'm excited to hear from Randy in August and in the future, just to see if there's other things that come to fruition as a result of this trip. The next segment I want to look at is the Life Center ministry. And so the Life Center is their core building in the middle of Deutschermaus. It actually sits on the back side of the second school we went to. It's literally across the street from the school's gym. And so it's very close proximity. They offer a whole lot there as far as chiropractic care, English learning and teaching, just English conversations. That's where they hold their church services Sunday evenings. They do fellowship events there and things. And so this video is about a minute and a half, but you'll see kind of just some of what we got to experience at the Life Center while we were there. So the Life Center kind of became our fallback. We weren't sure what was next. That became our kind of home base, if you will. That building, the space that they occupy would fit in this room with plenty of space to spare. It would probably take not even the back half of the room. But it was really incredible just to see how do they utilize the space for various events, for their church services, and how it just transforms based on how they set up chairs and tables. The chiropractic care you saw there, that's one of their church members who is a chiropractor and said, hey, I'm off on Monday. Why don't we offer some chiropractic care? And so it was really incredible just to see just all the different ways that they use it. And it was fun, too, when we were there on Monday and he was in, that all of us got to get adjusted. And it was fun to hear those who had never been adjusted by a chiropractor before, because there were some interesting holes coming out of that room back there. And so, just you hear oh and stuff like that. And so it was a lot of fun, just added to the ambiance of the whole Life Center. And so they have plans to, and have just gotten budgets in and things and estimates in for a new Life Center that they're looking to build. We thought we would be a part of that project while we were down there, but things got held up in paperwork by the city. And so they're looking to break ground here in the next few months to get ready for, thanks, Dan, to get ready for building that facility, a much nicer facility. It'll have a coffee shop in it, a place that people can come and just spend time and really just use that as a gateway for the gospel to go forth. And so for you all, favorite time at the Life Center, favorite moment, favorite happening, and why? Katie.
There was one night, all the guys were gone except Mr. Craniac. We were bored. We were all very tired. It had been a long day. There was a few guys laying on the couch, and Mr. Craniac was in a chair. He started singing these songs. I don't know what they were called, Mr. Craniac. You would know what it's called.
Can you give us a sample?
But I think Jaden was dancing. Elena was dancing. It was a funny moment of us tired. You could tell it, but it was a really funny moment, a bonding moment, guys.
So one of the first things I guess we did in Brazil was we attended that first Sunday just church service, and you kind of go in I'm not going to understand anything. So, we didn't really know what to do, but we started singing, and just as the whole night went on, it was just, it's easy to forget the sense of how far, God has reached, and how many, just where He is, and just being able to hear and sing and praise God in a different language, it gives sense and light to how great our God is and how far He's made it across, borders. It was awesome.
And along with that was what was so powerful, being from Cleveland, which has had a lot of generations of all different ethnic people coming here, various churches, to be in Dos Irmãos, which has the 200 years before German influence, then they had Italian influence I didn't know about, and I have Italian in me. And so it was just amazing. God also brought refugees from Venezuela to Dos Irmãos at this time. And we were able to use our Spanish to communicate with them. And it was just incredible to see that not only were they there, but they were flourishing in that place, welcome and employed. And a whole family with a, multi-generation family. And so that was something that I just appreciated and was so richly blessed by. And then the game night, too. We were at the Life Center a lot, and to hear Randy and Cindy's testimonies, the missionaries, and their kids, it was just too much.
It's a really small church, so it was really cramped a lot of the times, and but that means the person next to you have to talk to them because you guys are in such a small place. It's awkward if you don't because you're just standing right next to each other not talking. But the good thing is that we were all God's people, and that really just transcends language so much. But I don't know. It was just really amazing talking to everyone, even, communicating with people, even if we didn't speak the same language. And I think one of my favorite parts was meeting the youth. There was people like Eduardo, and I gave him the American nickname Id, and I'll call him Iddy. And I don't know if he was very fond of it, but
He was a good sport.
he was a very good sport with my American nickname for him, and it was just really great. I mean, just talking to people, that was awesome, and just like, yeah, okay.
So I have kind of two stories, but the first, we had like Mexican night for like celebrating birthdays and stuff, yeah. And so I have never seen a person eat a taco with a fork and knife. So this lady's trying to cut her taco and eat it with a fork. Like, okay. Yeah. But my second story is, it was English class. And so they were like, just, interact, play games. So we ended up playing Pictionary with a group of kids. And that was really fun, but it turned into drawing 15-second horses. So the whiteboard went around the table, and you just see them trying to draw a horse as fast as they can. And there was a picture of the finished, these horses, and it was really funny.
So I had a lot of memories at the Life Center that I really loved. I mean, I mentioned like the Mexican night, how I really loved eating that meal and connecting with the people there. I loved like even singing in Portuguese at their church service. I even enjoyed like washing dishes after some of the events. One weird note about that is they have to wash their dishes in cold water, which was a bit of a culture shock for me. But I think my favorite memory from the Life Center was, Corinna kind of mentioned it, we helped out with like, I think it was English night, right? When we did the board games and stuff.
Yeah.
It's English night. So they're like teaching the student, or some of the kids that came and adults that came, English. And we were sitting around a table and trying to figure out how do we connect with these people? Like it's very difficult not knowing their language and them not really knowing ours. So we were kind of brainstorming, trying to figure out what to do. And finally, I'm like, let's play Pictionary. So we did play Pictionary, and like once we pulled that out, it's almost like the language barrier just like went away, just because like everyone knows how to draw a picture. So that was probably my favorite memory.
So my favorite memory was the Mexican night. Me and Katie decided to sit with all Brazilians. So that was off the bat interesting. Yeah, and the little kids. And there were these two little kids that were just running all over the place. And what they would do is they would like run up to the curtain. They would like cover themselves in the curtain, like twirl in the curtain, and then go under and then act like they disappeared. And then come out the other side and then be like, ta-da. And that was just really funny. Yeah, it was like probably a good like hour of at least. Yeah, just same thing over and over and over, ta-da, ta-da, ta-da. I was like, wow, no way, you're coming out the same curtain again. That I just saw you crawl under. Yeah, but that was just a really good time. And then I started talking to the parents, and it was just really funny because, like little areas of Portuguese, that's all I knew. So like when they were like, loco, I was like, zin, loco. And then somehow we were talking about Stranger Things and like shows here, and they were all like talking about how they watch them. So it was just really cool to interact, and yeah, it was a good time.
So on the Mexican night with the same Eduardo that Elena talked about, or Eddie, I had gotten the opportunity to meet him a few nights before, and then he came back for the Mexican night, and he brought his family with him. So Eduardo was fluent in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. They were from Venezuela, so his dad spoke Spanish, his mom spoke mainly Portuguese, and his two little brothers spoke mainly Spanish. So I got to sit there, and Haven was there too, just laughing at me the whole time. Because I was trying to communicate through Eduardo to his dad in Spanish and his mom a little in Portuguese. But I had a great time. I got to connect with this family, and then they came back for the service on Sunday, so I got to talk to Eduardo and his family again. And it was just cool that I got to see the same kid at 3 or 4 different events and just keep building a relationship with him. And then I even got to meet the rest of his family. Little brothers, they were crazy, running everywhere. It was just a great experience to be able to interact with a full family.
Throughout the events at the Ministry Center, the interviewer in me loves to just learn about people's lives and to ask questions. So I was able to kind of sneak in and sit by some of the missionaries and just ask them, like, how did you get here, or what are some of your experiences? I was able to hear about Mr. Richner's brother's testimony. I was able to hear about another missionaries, how they got there. The wife thought it was never possible that they would be missionaries because her husband said, no way are we ever going outside of the country. But then there they were. God brought them there. And just hearing those stories, and also potential opportunities with like videography, stuff that I'm really passionate about. And they said, yeah, Aboy does this too. And they were telling me stories about that, how they had a group come in. So it was just really interesting to get those stories out. I also really loved, I was playing Pictionary at the English night with all of them, but then this girl walks in and she has a guitar case and I just go, oh! Like, I was so happy. I don't know, like, I can't speak Portuguese, but I can speak music. So I was like, oh man, do you play? So we just sat on the couch and she taught me a song in Portuguese, and I didn't know, she asked me, she said, do you know what these words mean? And I said, no, and she goes throughout the lyrics, and it was like, God is love, God is protecting, and it was amazing. It was amazing that I was able to hang out with her, and like music can break those language barriers.
So again with the kids, something I thought was really cool is like they didn't really know any English at all. And so we were like trying to communicate. Like there's this little boy next to me, and he knew the word yummy, and we were eating tacos. He would go, yummy. And it's funny because he got his translator out, and he spelled it really weird, and we were trying to figure out what he was, UHMI. And he was trying to get us to say it like 1,000 times. And then there's like this little girl, like all you had to do, like go up to the kids and do rock, paper, scissors, and you do this, and they'd play rock, paper, scissors with you. And there's this thing called shadow boxing, like you move your finger, like you have to move your head. They were doing that to me, and it was just cool. Like you didn't really necessarily need to know the language, but you could still have fun with them. And they just like loved hanging out with you, and you could similar games with them. So that was really cool.
I thought, like others have said, the English night with the students there was really cool, because at the start of the night, we're all kind of awkward and trying to figure out how to communicate with these people and try and connect with them. But by the end of the night, we're playing Pictionary, we're all laughing. Kids who weren't talking are now talking, and it was just really cool to see like the barriers being broken and be able to connect with them. And so,
yeah, it was really neat. Again, just to see all the different ways that space was used. But yeah, the English night, it was like hesitant, like, what do we do? We have to sit at different, like we're gonna sit at different tables. Like we're not just gonna huddle together and spread out a little bit. And then yes, to see kind of those conversations, people open up and things. Even some of the younger kids not knowing certain words. And so like, you know, they're playing Pictionary and their mom is their teammate, but their mom's whispering the word to them so that then they can draw it, and then like we're guessing the word, knowing what the word is, and like kind of like working around, you know, just kind of having fun with it. And so it was very special. And so it'll be really exciting to see when their new building gets built. It's in a slightly different part of town, maybe 10 or so blocks away from their current location, to see how that impacts their ministry and if it benefits it in any ways, and just kind of how that new space will be used. The last video I have for us this morning is kind of an excursions and activities. And so we did put a lot of time in between in the schools Monday, with the missionaries Monday night, in the school Tuesday, at the English class Tuesday night. Wednesday, we did a service day you'll see here pretty much most of the morning. And that was another casualty of humidity. You'll see we prime the walls. but the humidity was so high, the paint, there was no way that thin primer would dry enough to get a coat of paint on the walls. And so that got a little out of whack, but we pivoted and had a good time and got to go see a supermarket. And I don't think there's any pictures of that here, maybe a couple. But you kind of just see as we work through the week the different things we got to experience outside of just going to the schools and being at the Life Center. And so that's what this next video is, about 5.5 minutes.
So right now we're hiking in this like rainforest type thing, and we have so many explorers here. I myself is one. I'm super excited, and I'm glad you guys are along for the ride.
Total spontaneous moment of her just jumping in front of the camera as I'm filming us walking down a path. So you can see we did get to have a lot of fun as well on this trip. Lots of different excursions we took. Again, the Richners really balanced for us the fun with like the ministry side, outgoing to internal ministry amongst our group and just camaraderie and fun. And so I just want to ask everyone, favorite activity or excursion and why? And we'll do it kind of quickly.
I would say just going to the little town up in the mountains. It was just beautiful, and seeing the culture and the buildings, it was really cool. So
I really enjoyed playing basketball with everybody. And I enjoyed the chiropractor also. I don't know if that counts as an excursion or a trip, but I enjoyed playing basketball with everybody.
That was an experience.
I loved playing volleyball. I was on Mrs. Craniac's team. I had no idea she could serve balls like, it was insane. Like, she was our MVP. It was like, oh, I loved it, but that was probably my favorite thing.
She became Karen the Killer Craniac.
Karen the Killer
Once we started playing
Craniac.
sand volleyball.
Yes.
My favorite was definitely climbing behind the waterfall with our group and just almost falling a few times and then just getting to be like within 5 feet of the water was really cool.
I would like to second what you said, and Mrs. Craniac, it was me, Miss Craniac, and Sandra, and she totally won us that game. She put us all on her back. What? Oh, sorry. She was on our team too. I have a bad memory. But yeah, she was insane. She had like 15 straight points in serves. So that was great. I really liked the basketball too, and sharing my testimony at the basketball was also really cool.
I just liked it all. So choosing a favorite is kind of impossible, but I guess we'll just go with, I really enjoyed the volleyball, and then also Gramado, the city that was up in the mountains, like Haben said.
I liked the volleyball too, and sadly, I was on the receiving end of Mrs. Craniac's wonderful serves.
Me too.
Yeah, So yeah, that was really fun. And I also like climbing behind the waterfall.
So basketball night was really fun. There was they don't have a lot of girls who play basketball with them, only like one, and she's American, so that was kind of fun. And then I got to share my testimony for one of the first times in front of a group of people. And the painting thing, just a funny story. Mr. Craniac was like, don't push yourself, because I was painting with a really tall stick, and he's like, you're gonna hurt your shoulders the next morning. I was like, no, I can do it, I'm fine. And then the next morning I wake up and I'm so sore, and I'm like really hurting, but like I did not say anything, because I wasn't gonna let him know that he was right, but well, now he knows, of course, but it's in the past.
Listening to the students' testimonies in the basketball court in various places was very powerful. I hadn't even heard them before. And what happened was that Randy, who of course is fluent in Portuguese, would translate after a few breaths, and so everybody could hear it in both languages. And that was amazing. And then you can see that we actually did really need the chiropractor, because we actually worked really hard.
My favorite activity was when so me, Seth, and Ian had went and played basketball at the men's league one of the first nights we were there, and it was just fun having no way to really communicate other than the sport of basketball and hand motions, and it was just fun to bond with the guys there and just sit down and have a good gospel presentation to the men that were there. So it was really cool.
Before we left for the trip, I said that we have a great youth group here. And this trip absolutely solidified what I said, because, again, despite being sick all trip, being tired, every day they'd ask you, Miss Craniac, how are you? How are you? Just watching out for you every minute. It's really touches your heart. One of the things I really enjoyed most, though, was we'd get back to the hotel and Ryan would go, okay, we'll meet upstairs in 10 minutes. I'm like, oh my gosh, were we ever going to bed? But during this time of debriefing, you're all tired. And it was just honest feelings coming out. I just want to praise God for that. I want to just thank all you guys for that as well, because it was just a really, really special time. And Ryan, we want to thank you for putting it all together and stuff, because it was truly amazing. And if you don't know this about Ryan, he likes everything in order, and not everything went in order. Do we have time? Can I tell the? So one of the reasons Ryan really wanted Karen and I to go was because we're seasoned travelers, right? I mean, I've been in, 56 different countries, right? So some of you have heard this already, but we got through Atlanta, no problem. We wind up in Sao Paulo, and we're going through security, and the metal detector goes off. Oh, what's that? Oh, I got a pen. So she took that off, and it went through again and went off. And I had a hip replacement a couple years ago, and this is the first time going through security, and the metal detector went off. Some of you are smiling, you know what I mean. So anyway, all through that, I get patted down, we go. Karen and I are back, everybody else I think is at Subway, and I go, I forgot my phone. Oh no. So I go back to security, which is really, we were in Terminal 2, it wasn't that far away. And
It's a 15-minute walk from where we were to security.
Yeah. And I said, well, and I left my phone. Oh, no problem. And the lady shows me a picture of my phone on her phone. So 2 minutes later, a guy comes over and explains to me, no problem, sir, we have your phone. It's at Lost and Found in Terminal 3. Now, I may be exaggerating here, but Terminal 3 is from the church to Giant Eagle. Okay? I'm sure it was closer than that. Now, again, I wasn't feeling well. Anyway, I didn't tell anybody. I just took off, went down to Terminal 3, had to wait in line, got the phone, got back. I'm sweating because I'm hurrying, and they're about ready to board the plane. Now, Ryan, seasoned travelers, you said this was the worst moment of my trip. I won't tell you what Karen did, but it was fun. Anyway, despite being sick, despite being tired, despite being cold, I would do this trip in a heartbeat again. It was wonderful.
Yep, I agree. It's a trip that I'm already thinking of when are we going back? Just not only for I'll use the word comfort of knowing the space now, knowing the town, knowing where we'd be staying, all that, but even just to see, we met with, in the one school, 5th graders, I think, were the youngest we met, oldest were 10th. So if we go back in 3 years, we might see some of those same 5th graders again. So we'll have to have new words. But just to see, for them to see that it's not just a one and done kind of thing, but that we want to kind of perpetuate and keep this interaction going. Last question for everyone, and then we'll get ready for dismissal here. What's one thing you don't want to forget about the trip? And let's just alternate down.
Again, I would say just the time spent with our youth group here. They're an amazing bunch.
It's hard to say anything other than what Mr. Grenak just said. It was just the constant bonding we had, and even between just me, Ian, and Seth sharing a room, and just a lot of late night conversations that were, I think they were awesome conversations of just getting to know each other and pointing each other in good directions.
We had a devotional plan that we did every day, and we would discuss things at night. There was actually a pool on the top floor of our hotel, but we didn't end up in it very often because it was cold and rainy a lot, and we were so busy. But hearing the discussions that come out of that when you're with people for a protracted amount of time, the kids were asking, questions about doctrine, all kinds of deep, deep questions, and just being a part of it, listening to it, and jumping in once in a while was really, really amazing. So thank you all.
I would have to say Mr. Kraniak breaking out in a song in random times in our trip. I have never heard this man sing before with so much spirit, and it was awesome. And I'm glad we have some recordings of it because I doubt I'll ever hear that again. So it was awesome.
I also really liked our just nightly debriefs when we could. Sometimes we'd get home really late and we're like, oh, we can't do it. So, but it was just really cool to hear just different views on the day and just how everyone was doing and what they thought about the devotional. So that was really cool.
So one of the reasons why I went on this trip, aside from being with our wonderful youth group and getting to be with you guys, was I have been somewhat considering missions, and I just kind of wanted to see what a missionary's life looked like. And so something that I don't want to forget is the experiences that I had there. And something that I realized while I was there is that the Richners, what they're doing in Brazil, is not that much different than what we're doing here. I mean, they had youth groups, they had things like basketball outreach, they held just regular church services, and pretty much the only difference is that they speak Portuguese there, and we speak English here. And so I think that was kind of eye-opening for me to be able to see, I don't have to go overseas to do that. I can start right now and right here. And if God calls me overseas later, then great. But also, if he wants me to stay here, that's something that I can totally do. So.
One thing that I don't want to forget about this trip, it's really hard to say just one thing, because I wish I could not forget everything. Like, it was just amazing how God put everything together. Like Jacob said, the times in our room, we got pretty deep sometimes, and then other times it was very surface and hilarious. Like, one night, we just had the Brazilian TV on, and then out of nowhere, there's like puppeteers, and Brazilian Elvis pops out, and he's like trying to be Elvis, and he's just Brazilian. So it was like really funny because it was like a terrible English, like it was just a really heavy accent. And we were dying laughing. But then there's other nights where we were like talking about very deep stuff and like mental health and just great stuff like that. So it's really cool to see that specifically. And then also I just never want to forget how God worked everything out for us. And even kind of specifically me with the whole passport. If you guys don't know, I didn't have my passport until under 24 hours before we left. So that really helped me develop some patience and trust in God. So as silly as it might sound, I'm pretty thankful for that. And just how smoothly everything went. Like, even though Mr. Kraniak lost his phone and stuff like that, I've honestly never been on a trip that has never had a delay. And that's just there and back. That's just a flight there and back. And we went on, what, like 6 or 8 flights? And we didn't get one delay. I was like, my mind was blown, and it was just really cool to see how, you know, how God orchestrated everything, and I just never want to forget that.
I think my big thing is just how, like, everyone in our group, it seemed like, was always just smiling and laughing at all times, like, no matter what we were doing, especially with Jacob and Seth. Like, we broke a bamboo stick on a wall in our room. I came running back in the rain with Seth and slid into the door. Like, just the ridiculous things that happened, and with everyone. But it was just, we were always smiling, always laughing. Pastor Ryan's always doing something hilarious. Like, and then just to see, I think, how that energy impacts the students. Like, when we're talking to them, like, and then they start smiling and laughing. And then it's just, like, the impact that I think that God can have through, like, one, like, 5-minute block of teaching kids animals from the United States can get kids to come to the Life Center once and then hopefully come again, and then with the end goal of being saved. So I think just seeing, like, I know especially Seth, the kid is always smiling. Like, and you could just visibly tell that the students loved it. It was just great to see.
Well, being a senior, or a recently graduated senior, I'm kind of just soaking in everything I can because my time is almost up in the youth group. But these people are like my siblings. That's kind of how they are. And I've known most of these people my entire life. I think me and Jacob's been like at this church in the nursery. Like, that's how long I've known them. Well, I mean, yeah, but we're getting to know you. So it's just to never forget that, but even to get to know them even more by being on this trip. I mean, you don't think you would since I've known them for so long, but I mean, playing in the pool with everybody, sharing a room with Elena and Morgan, and getting to, sometimes we did stay up later than we should have, but I would say it was worth it with the conversations that we had. Or being on a team with Seth and Caitlin, or Karenna and Jacob, Team Lumberjacks, let's go. But it's just moments that I don't want to forget.
I never want to forget how like the smallest thing you can do can leave a big impact, like you were saying. And just like anywhere you go, and it can leave a great impact for Christ, anything you do.
I think for me, I don't want to forget the feeling of having to rely on God. When you're on a trip like that and you're away from your family and you're in a different country, you're kind of forced to have to rely on God and trust Him with it. And so I just felt like my faith really grew through that. And with the team, like we all grew together, growing closer to God, which was cool.
Also want to mention, during this trip, we have a new band in our church now, and you guys should definitely become fans. It's called the
Mute her.
Oh, what is it? What is your band called? Baptist Bible Band. It's Ian and Jacob, with Jacob beatboxing, and Ian is doing his awesome rapping. So it's actually on YouTube if you want to check it out, just saying. So, yeah.
So we did have a good time. We had fun. I think one of the things I don't want to forget is just God's provision, God's grace through it all. Yeah, the low point of the trip was standing in Sao Paulo airport going, where did Dan go? And knowing that it was, a 20, 30-minute walk, because they actually tell you in that airport how far you have to walk. They give you little signs as you're going. It's 5 to 7 minutes further when you're going to different places. But then God's grace in the moment of we're standing literally waiting for our group to be called to board, to walk out to these buses that are going to take us out onto the tarmac to our plane, and having Katie going, hey, let's pray. And then we finished praying, and we almost instantaneously it felt like we turned around, and it was like the heavens declared the glory of here comes Dan down the escalator, and it was like the clouds parted, the sun shining. There were probably some birds in the Snow White somewhere singing, but it was just this moment of awesome, thank you, because I was going through do we leave Dan and Karen behind? Elena has Karen's boarding pass on her phone. How do we get it was just, so God's provision, God's grace through the whole thing, seeing us through, seeing us there, seeing us back, and even opening doors. Real quickly, and we'll wrap up here in just a second, I want to share some of the unintended impacts, things that we weren't expecting that happened. The first I already explained, that local reporter coming into the classroom in the first school. That was something that we weren't anticipating. While we were in that first school, Handal got to have a conversation with one of the educational aides that was in the classroom for about 20, 25 minutes. And they were so deep in conversation that he was our timer to tell us when to rotate groups. And I look over and he's just in conversation. So it was like, switch, kind of keep it moving. But him getting to have a conversation how that guy's mother is Jewish, his dad was Lutheran, but he's not sure what he believes, where he's at. And just that door to be open for Randy to connect and start sharing the gospel was really incredible. He got to have another conversation with an English teacher at that school and an English teacher at the second school we were at that just came as fruit of us being in the classroom. It was fun. I sat up front in the van for most of our trips. Valdemir, our driver, awesome driver. I had to retrain my mind how to drive in the States after just watching them drive in Brazil. There is no gap. They just don't honor any sort of cushion between cars. It's literally there's a bumper, there's the next bumper. And so it really was tight. And watching him just maneuver and keep us safe was really incredible. But as I was sitting up there, every once in a while he'd look over and he would just start talking. And I would be, and some of them, you guys were funniest part was the whole thing today was you going, just, oh yeah, okay, trying to keep up. But then sitting up front and Randy's riding with us, there's 3 seats across the front, and he's in the middle, and they're just having this deep conversation. And him looking over and going, we're talking about the gospel right now, and talking some more, and then we're talking about his upbringing. So he's like giving me these little like Cliff's Notes, side notes things. And so that was really incredible. And then just the opportunity we had with our hotel, the owners of the hotel, he was trying to develop relationships with them. And so we had left them. Thank you to Karen for thinking of this, because it totally, bringing thank you notes that we could write and hand out. And we gave them one, and they actually wrote back and said, "Dear and beloved," this is the couple that owns the hotel, "it was an honor to have you with us. We are very moved by everything you represent to us. What a joy for us to have such special people here and to be able to give you a little of our love through food and accommodation. Thanks for choosing us. We're very happy with all the messages we have heard. How to keep the emotion? Impossible. But it made it all worth it even more. Big hug with giant affection. We will miss you, Roberta and Jair." And there was even the effect that some of their staff members who were coming in sometimes 2 hours early to feed us breakfast actually were tearful as we were leaving on the final morning. And so just some of these little things, these little unintended, these doors that God saw that he was going to open, that we were just totally oblivious to until we were seeing it in retrospect. And so those are just a few of the examples. I'm praying that, and I'd ask you to be praying, and for all of you to be praying, that more and more doors will be opened as time goes forward for the Richners down there, for others to come to faith in Christ, to know the Life Center, to come to church there and really just grow in there and deepen their faith. And so thank you all for listening. This took longer than I expected, but I really wanted to give everyone a chance to talk. Let me go ahead and let's pray, and then we'll dismiss ourselves. All right, Heavenly Father, we are so just overwhelmed by your goodness, your grace, your mercy, your love, what you've displayed for us through your Son, Jesus Christ. And Father, I pray that for all of us, that we would be planting seeds every step of the way, that we would be planting and developing relationships with the hope that we can share the gospel and see gospel fruit, see the gospel take root in the hearts of those we've come in contact with, those we love, those we're just meeting. Father, that we would see individuals as Jesus saw the crowds with compassion, and to see that there are many people in this world, whether it's in Brazil or here, everywhere in between, that are hurting, that are searching, that are looking for something. And Father, we believe that is the gospel. And so, Father, I just pray that you impress upon our hearts the importance to share the gospel everywhere we go, to develop relationships with individuals with that aim in mind, and that we would want to get to know people so that we can speak into their lives in meaningful ways, in eternal ways, not just meeting temporal needs. Father, we praise and thank you again for the love you've shown us through your Son, Jesus Christ, from his being sent, his birth, his life, his death, his resurrection, and his ascension. And Father, we look forward to his return, from his second coming. And Father, don't let us lose sight of what you have accomplished out of love and for your glory. And so, Father, we ask that you just use us each for your glory and for our good every step of the way, every day of our lives, until you call us home. We pray all these things in Jesus' most wonderful and glorious name. Amen. Again, thank you all so much for listening. If you've got kiddos in the nursery, please go save my wife. But if you have any questions, we'll be up here. Please feel free. I would have loved to have done a Q&A back and forth sort of thing, but it just doesn't work out in this setting. So if you have questions, we're here to answer them. Just let us know. Again, God bless. Thank you again for all your prayers and your financial support for this trip. Have a great day.